First of all, welcome to today's seminar or webinar. For friends online that I haven't had a chance to meet before, let me introduce myself. My name is Mike Marino. I am the CEO and I am the founder of Jasper Executive Coaching and Consulting. Glad to have you joining us today. My life's work is around developing strong leaders, strong teams, strong culture to help organizations perform at their very best. And I do that through coaching and through consulting, through workshops. I do writing of books, speaking, all just trying to help build leaders, build their self-awareness, build their skill set, build their confidence so they can be the best leaders possible. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you for registering for the seminar today, and thank you for investing 50 minutes of your time today. My goal is to make it the most meaningful 50 minutes of your day today. But good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. We have friends across the country and outside the country on the webinar today, so welcome to all of you. Just a quick setup, I guess, on how the webinar is going to play out. If you're trying to figure out some of the applications on your side, I'll be sharing my screen today, and I'll be using PowerPoint as a way to introduce new concepts and approaches around leadership with you. Your cameras and your microphones are off, so you don't have to worry about that, what your picture is or where it is or whether you're muted or not muted. Cameras and microphones from your standpoint are off. You should have a small icon at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. And what I'd like you to do over the course of the next 50 minutes, if you have a question, just type it into that. And then I'm planning at the end of the webinar, I'll address the questions at one time. I'll keep an eye on them. If I see there's some kind of adding up on a particular topic, I'll take a break and maybe jump in and answer some of those on the fly. But the goal is to answer those at the end as we have time. So for our flow today, as I share the screen, I'm going to do my very best not to drown you in PowerPoint slides, but I do want to present visuals in addition to you hearing from me, because I want you to see and I want you to hear these concepts, because our goal here, the commitment for the 50 minutes today, is you're going to have tangible takeaways to help you to be a better leader. And I think both hearing and visually seeing some of the concepts and approaches discussed and shared is probably the best way to do that. And the only other opening comment I would make is I know folks on the line right now, different backgrounds, different experiences, probably at different places vocationally in your careers right now, and that's all okay. You're probably at different levels of leadership responsibility. That's okay. There may be some folks on the webinar today that are still individual contributors that want to be leaders someday. That's okay. The most important thing to remember, though, is we all lead, regardless of whether we have a formal title or role that enables us a platform to lead. We all lead. So whether that's at work, at home, you're a brother or sister, husband or wife, whatever that is, socially, if you volunteer somewhere, if you mentor, if you coach, if you're part of a peer group, we all lead to some extent. So don't feel like you either don't have formal leadership responsibilities or not enough. We all lead, and our goal today is to help all of us just lead a little bit better. So that's the goal for today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. And again, remember, as we're going through the webinar, if you have questions, please type them into the Q&A icon at the very bottom of your screen. So I'm going to start out again by welcoming everybody today. The name of our webinar is 4 Keys to Step Up Your Leadership Today. And I will say these are 4 keys. They may be familiar to some folks online today because they come from a book that I wrote about a year ago called Transform Yourself, Transform Your Organization. I know some have probably already read that book. So it might be a refresher and some new things for those folks. I will say for those of you that were the first 10 people to register for the webinar, I promised you a free book. After this webinar, I'll be reaching out to you to find out how you would like to receive that book, whether an ebook or a hard copy. I'd be happy to mail to you. So those will be going out today. And I'll be following up with you today. Okay, so with that, we are going to roll into our webinar. So first thing I'd like to say is just a description I like to use around leadership. And that is, I like to say that leadership's a social thing. And by that, I mean that it's the use of our social influence, and we're talking about our words and our actions to bring out the best in each person in order to bring out the best in our organizations if we're thinking about, working within our organizations and our companies that we're in today. But it's a social thing. It's our words and our actions. I want you to remember that people are always watching and listening to you as a leader. So be intentional, be careful, be thoughtful in your words and your actions. And I'm not just talking about the one time. A lot of times folks, when they think about leadership, it's, when I have those mountaintop opportunities where once a year I get to express vision and where our organization's going or where our team is going and those big type events. What I'm here to tell you today is it's our words and actions that really accumulate over time that give us that influence that allows us to lead effectively. So you're going to hear me refer back to words and actions quite a bit today because those are really, really important. Before we do anything else, though, I want to point out that we're talking about, as leaders, everybody on this webinar today is interested in growing, developing, and that's key because if we're part of a team or part of an organization, if we want to see that team or we want to see that organization change or improve, we need to bring out the best in ourselves first. We need to be the example. We need to transform first before we expect people around us to transform and grow. And I'm going to introduce a concept today around that of vertical versus horizontal development or vertical and horizontal learning. And what I mean by that is vertical learning. Think of that as we learn more about who we are and what we're about. Horizontal learning is really the things we can do and the things we know. Both of those components are really important in leadership. For today's time, the vast majority of it, I'm going to be focusing on principles out of the book that deal with the vertical learning and the vertical development and making sure we understand who we are before we jump into thinking about how we want to lead a team or lead an organization. So for the 4 keys, here are the 4 that we're going to focus our time on today. And my hope is that there's a takeaway from each one of those that's going to help you improve as a leader. So first, we're going to talk about a learner's mindset. Just, are you interested in developing and growing? That is critical. Number 2, something I call being a well-defined leader. We'll get into that in detail, but I'm really talking about each individual fundamentally understanding, what is my purpose? What do I want to be about? What principles do I want to, have people experience in me when I interact with them, helping me be well-defined so people know as a leader what they can expect from me. The 3rd key is around self-awareness. All of us need to have greater self-awareness. Here we're, just talking about knowing our bodies, our emotions, being aware of what's going on. So when we interact with people, we're making conscious decisions and conscious responses and not just reacting to things. And the last one, importantly, is about becoming trustworthy. None of us are going to be effective leaders if we don't build and maintain trust with those people around us on a regular basis. So those are the 4 areas that we're going to jump into. And again, questions that you have, feel free to pop them into the questions icon and we'll get to them as we go along. So the first key is, again, having a learner's mindset. And here I'm going to start out just by saying, if you're serious about growing and if you're on this webinar today, My hope is you are serious about growing, then you really have to be serious about learning. And learning can take different shapes and forms for different people. It depends on what your style is and what your preferences are. But when I talk about learning, it's simple things. We can't be standing still. We can't be status quo. So, what are you engaging with to make you better? For some of us, it's books. Some like to listen and watch podcasts. Some of us are part of peer groups where we share ideas with other people. Sometimes we mentor people or we get mentored. We're a coach to people. We get coached. Whatever those avenues are for you, again, be really committed, be really intentional about those things because learning is really, really important to our growth. The second thing I already talked about is vertical versus horizontal growth. Again, just as a reminder, the vertical piece is about us knowing who we are as a person. The horizontal piece are all the skills and capabilities that you can learn from all kinds of workshops and books on my skills and on my competencies so I can be a full leader to the people around me. And again, we're focusing on vertical for the most part today. Within a learner's mindset, knowing the difference between recognizing in yourself when you're in learner mode and when you're in kind of knower judger mode. And other people will call this kind of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. But I want you to always lean towards being in the learner mindset. There are points in time where being a knower is important. People come to us as leaders for answers, for solutions sometimes. And if it's time constrained, sometimes the knower has to come out. But I'm going to ask you to really think more about constantly trying to be in the learner mindset. And if you're wondering where you are today, the best way to really find out, ask people that you trust. Ask people that you interact with on a regular basis and just be honest. I'd love to know, do I come across as a learner or do I come across as a knower who, thinks they know everything and judges what other people say? And it's okay to get that feedback and work on that, which takes us to the next point, which is if you have a learner's mindset, you're going to have an appetite for and you're going to crave feedback. You're going to want feedback on a regular basis, not just when people offer it to you, but I want you to get in the mindset of just asking for it. After a meeting, after a one-on-one, after a presentation, whatever it is, ask people for feedback. It's the number one way that we learn. I think of feedback, if I have a steady source of feedback, it's kind of like I have a steady diet. But just like a diet, there's things that have a healthy diet that I like more than others. Some things don't taste as good as others, but I eat them all because I want to remain healthy. Same thing with feedback. You're going to ask for it. You may get some things that don't feel or taste as good as some other things people might say, but bring it all in, use it all, and help yourself improve as a leader. The last thing I'll say on here is to be something I call an unlearner. All of us have either patterns of thinking, ways of thinking, or conclusions that we have just carried with us over time. We learned when we were young, we learned from people around us, our parents, we learned early in our careers, but we've got certain things locked in that are go-tos, and we think that's the way things always need to be. And all I'm trying to encourage you is to be okay with unlearning some of that stuff. Sometimes that just becomes something really comfortable for us. We can go back to easily, we can repeat it, but just like some things we hold on too long to, like that, hooded sweatshirt I have in my closet that I pull out on certain days just because on Saturday mornings it feels really comfortable. And my wife always tells me it's time probably to replace that. It's okay for me to take that hooded sweatshirt and probably donate it somewhere and get a new one. Same thing with some of the beliefs and understandings we have. So just think about, are there certain things that, in terms of having a learner's mindset, we just need to unlock and unlearn certain things. The last thing I'll say about a learner's mindset is as a leader, as you're doing these things, as you're serious about your growth, as you're becoming, if you're having more of a learner's mindset than a knower's mindset, you're getting feedback from people, you're reading books, you're listening to podcasts. What you're doing, back to our words and actions, are really the social part of being a leader. You're kind of creating a culture for learning around you. So as the leader, by example, in doing these things and having a learner's mindset, you're creating a culture in your organization and your team, the people you work with, so they'll want to have a learner's mindset as well because they see you demonstrating that. Okay? So that's key number one, have a learner's mindset. Key number two, we'll probably spend more time here than on the other keys. It's a little deeper, and it's what I call being well-defined. And before I get into the components of being well-defined, I wanted to offer up for you the picture of what someone who is well-defined may look like, and challenge you as I'm describing these things to think about, do you know people who come across this way? Do you know folks that have a really full, deep understanding of themselves? This is what I'm about. This is what I'm here to do. This is what I get excited about. Do they get that about themselves? Are they self-differentiated? So do they know that so crisply and so clearly that they stand out from other people? And I'm sure you know people like that. The other aspect is, they have a non-anxious presence. I've always found that people that are well-defined, they know their purpose, they know their principles, they act consistently with them. They're really non-anxious because very few things that occur during the day can upset them. There's no peaks and valleys and stress and rebound because I'm comfortable with who I am. I know how I'm going to operate. I want to come across consistently. There's no greater gift as a leader that you can give to the people around you that you're the steward of than to be a non-anxious presence. I'll say that again. There's nothing more important you can do as a leader for the people around you than be a non-anxious presence. Because when you're not anxious, they'll be non-anxious. If you're anxious, they're going to be anxious. You don't want to be an anxiety broker. So a non-anxious presence, you should see this in a well-defined person. Well-defined people are consistent, they're deliberate. Again, peaks and valleys are limited, they're pretty steady, and they're open and they're vulnerable. Not only asking about feedback and things like that, but vulnerable just in terms of sharing, I don't know the answer, or I made a mistake and I need you to help me understand, what went wrong. For leadership, that's really, really important to be able to be that vulnerable. So again, I'm starting out here with kind of a description or painting a picture of what a well-defined person would look like if you bounced into one. And I'm hoping right now you have a picture in your mind of someone like that. Okay, because this is what I want each of us to kind of grow into in terms of being a well-defined leader. Becoming a well-defined leader, again, I work with folks in two areas about being well-defined. One is their unique purpose, or what I call up, and one are their individual principles of their IP. Okay, so for people that are well-defined, they know their purpose, and I'm going to define that as their what, to distinguish from a really popular term that's out there, which is understanding your why. Now, the person that's well-defined does know their purpose, their what, and knows their why, and more importantly, knows how to live that out. Okay. And I'm not going to get caught up in the order between what and why. I know if you've read Simon Sinek and he says, start with why, find your why, he's trying to get you to look back and understand the things that have formed you, motivate you, make you act in a way that helps you define what your purpose is. I work at it from the standpoint, sometimes for folks, it's easier just to understand their what. this is what I'm about. And sometimes that helps them click back into understanding what some of the motivational factors were in driving to that what. So I'm not too carried away about what order you define or you describe your unique purpose, but you need to get to that purpose, which is your what. What am I here to do? What makes me different? What benefit can I bring to other people? And when it comes to the living it out, once you have your purpose defined, and I'm talking about a purpose that's beyond your vocational purpose, beyond your work purpose, okay? Because we all have different platforms we've been given in our lives. We have work, we have home, we have places that, we volunteer. We have places we go with, friends and associates. We might be a volunteer in an organization. We may coach a youth team. There's different things we do. The goal is once you get your purpose defined, then you get to live it out in all those platforms. So people get to experience your purpose at work, people get to experience your purpose at home, people get to experience your purpose in the community, wherever you're connected. And we're going to talk more about, how you get to understanding this unique purpose. The second thing about being well-defined is getting your hands around your individual principles. I call them principles. Other people may call them values. I distinguish between the two because sometimes I find values to be somewhat aspirational, where principles are more defined. You can put behaviors around them. I can measure them. I can track them. So I like the concept of principles. So I use IP or individual principles. And these are really just how are others going to see us on a regular basis? How do people experience us? And these become the foundation of our behaviors that people see in us. Again, back to leadership being a social thing. Our words and our actions, our principles drive our behaviors and how people see us, and that impacts how well we lead them. So a little bit more on each of these. As far as the unique purpose, I come at it from this angle is I firmly believe that each of us is uniquely made for a unique purpose. Think about it. There is no one else like you. Doesn't matter how many billions of people are on this earth. There is not another one exactly like you. No one has your gifts. No one has your talents. No one has your strengths. No one has your experiences. No one has your relationships. None of that. You are uniquely made. So therefore, I always encourage people to try and figure out then what is really unique about your purpose. Again, purpose being what do I really believe I'm here to do? Because once I understand that, I'll become more well-defined as a leader. So just real quickly, this is a model we came up with at an organization I worked in previously. I can talk to you about it in more detail, but I'm going to share just this one page because I wanted to prompt questions in your own mind as you start thinking about what is my unique purpose. And as we bounce around this atom, I'm going to start with on the upper left-hand side, the CO, which stands for critical outcome. So what I would want you to ask yourself as you're trying to drive at and understand your unique purpose in terms of a critical outcome, ask yourself or even ask other people, what am I known for? What do people count on me for? Kind of what is my personal brand, if you will, that people would play back to me? That makes you unique, makes you different, and you need to understand what those critical outcomes are. The second one, as we go counterclockwise, is your driving passion. This one's pretty straightforward. I mean, what motivates you? What energizes you? And more than anything, what, when you hear it, see it, touch it, brings you to action, fuels action in you. That's your driving passion. Think about what kind of flips that switch for me that fuels action. The third thing, AE, is assimilated experience and your experiences. And here I'm talking about what are the things that have shaped you over time. These could be things that, happened way back when we were 5, 6, 8, 10 years old. Could be happened 5 years ago, 2 years ago. It could be things that happened to us. It could be things that we observed. It could have been things we were just part of, but everybody has certain experiences in their life. And if you're thinking about some of those things right now, they're probably giving you like a little shake or a little chill as you think about those, right? There's just certain things that locked in that help define kind of who you were and what you were about in those experiences. So play those back. And again, for each of these questions, kind of think about making notes around each one of them, because at the end, it'll be like a jigsaw puzzle to help bring them all together and figure out what that unique purpose is for you. The fourth thing is something we call cumulative knowledge. And I like to think of that, or, what are the things that just naturally interest you? What are the things that if we have some spare time, you like to put time there? That may be things that you learn, really easily, things that come easily to you over time, and you just keep going there. That's your cumulative knowledge base. So think about and start again, take notes on what are those things that kind of interest you, you learn easily. Emerging skill is the next one. Again, think of this as something that maybe you've honed over time that makes you unique. You may have learned something at a really early age, and it may have been, maybe you're a musician and music, came easily to you early and you've honed it over time, or you just had a genuine interest in science and now you are so unbelievably skilled in the area of science that makes you different. So think about the skill sets that you've initiated and have developed over time, because those contribute to your unique purpose and making you you. And the last piece I'll talk about is something we call prevailing talents. And without getting into a lot of detail, these are just things that we're naturally good at, our natural strengths. And you can do assessments to get at some of these things. And we don't have time to talk about those today. But there are just certain things that we're naturally good at. You might just be a very adaptable person. You can flex in the moment, think in the moment, you prefer that, you like that. Well, guess what? That's part of what makes you unique. And if you got into a situation where you weren't able to utilize some of those natural strengths, that would negatively impact you. Okay. So again, part of your unique purpose, think about the things that are just natural strengths of yours. You may naturally be an empathetic person. Some of us are not. But if you have empathy and you can connect with people and kind of get a sense of what they're feeling, where they're at, and be a good listener about that, that's a gift. But that also makes you unique in a certain way and will help form your purpose. So my goal in sharing this model with you about UP, or your unique purpose, again, is I want you to think in these 6 areas. Ask yourself the questions about critical outcome, driving passion, experiences, knowledge, skills, and talents, and start shaping and forming the things that are different and unique about you. And don't be afraid to ask other people about these things as well. If they're not coming to you, sometimes it's nice to just ask other people, hey, you know me, what am I known for? What are my outcomes? What do you come to me for? Okay. So this is really important. It's not stuff that we tend to stop and spend time thinking about every day. It's hard. It's deep thinking, right? It's deep thought. But I encourage you to go here, because again, the whole idea is we want to be well defined. And once we understand that purpose, and then we get the confidence and the energy in us that comes from having that purpose, that's what contributes to us being well defined. And then being well defined helps us to be that non-anxious, consistent leader that our people need. Okay. So that's unique purpose. Here's one quote I'll leave you. This is Howard Thurman. Howard Thurman was a 20th century author, professor, writer, civil rights leader. This was his quote, and I love it. It says, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive." And that's what we're trying to get at with the concept of unique purpose. What makes you come alive? because that is what makes you different. And that's what will help make you be well-defined and help you be a well-defined leader. On the principle side, here, again, a lot of detail we could go into, but this is just how other people experience us and see us on a day in and day out basis. What are those things that are important to us that we're going to live out regardless of the situation, regardless of the stress, regardless of who's in the room? This is the way I am. Okay. And the model around this I always work with people on is come up with a one-word noun as the principle. And I'll give you an example in a second. Give it a description, not a definition, but a description. What does that look like? Try to write out what a mindset is if you are actually living that principle. So what kind of things do I need to be thinking about that would allow me to function within that principle? And then behaviors. What are the tangible behaviors people can expect to see from me if I'm living out this principle? So one example that I use from clients that they have identified for themselves, the principle is the word courage, a noun, easy, boom, courage. What's the description they use? Well, the description for them was overcoming challenges and barriers, overcoming anxiety, speaking and acting with honesty and integrity. That was their idea of what courage would look like. The mindset they wanted to have on this team was, well, if we're going to demonstrate courage, this is the way we need to be thinking. We need to believe that conflict is not a bad thing. It can be a good thing and it can be healthy. We have to have a mindset that we're open to the thoughts of other people. We have to have resolve and we have to be free from fear. We're okay if we make a mistake, we can take a little bit of a risk. So that was kind of the mindset they wanted everybody on the team to have. And then the tangible behaviors are, we're going to engage in healthy conflict. We're going to be willing to take risks. We're going to be fully present when we're together. And the thing about the behaviors I want to mention is that they need to be specific enough so that when, and I'm not saying if, because this is important, when you ask other people and when you challenge yourself, am I living this principle? You're going to want them to measure you and you're going to want to measure yourself across these behaviors. I encourage everybody, once they establish principles, whether it's for an individual, for a team, for an organization, once you have those behaviors, you have to measure back against them because that's the only way you're going to have change over time. So go to others, measure yourself. In this particular case, am I engaging in healthy conflict? Give myself a letter grade. For this last 3 months, was I a B, a C, or a D? Have I been willing to take risks or I've been too comfortable? Give myself a grade or ask somebody else to give you a grade. And then over time, go back to those same people, do your own self-assessment and see how your grades are doing. Are your grades improving? Because that'll tell you if you're living into your principles. So that, again, unique purpose, individual principles, it's a lot about being a well-defined leader. And again, where we started was, what does that look like? Someone has a deep understanding of themselves, someone that's self-differentiated from other people, someone who comes across and easy to work with because they have a non-anxious presence, someone who's consistent, steady, no peaks and valleys, open, available, vulnerable, honest with people, having the purpose defined, having your principles defined, living those out in our words and actions will help us be a well-defined leader. I know that's a lot from a kind of an introduction on purpose and principle, but I hope it triggers something in you that you want to go deeper in these areas and start defining them for yourself, because that is the crux of vertical learning about ourselves, who we are, what we want to be about. I'm going to have one other quote for you before we move out of key 2, and this is from Norm Sanju. He was the former general manager of the Dallas Mavericks. I live in Dallas, Texas, therefore I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan. But what Norm said one time when he was being interviewed at the end of his career, he says, when you are a leader, it's so important before you lead that you know who you are. And I don't know if he was thinking about it the same way I was in terms of purpose and principles, but to me, that hits right at being a well-defined leader. You have to know who you are as a person before you're going to be successful as a leader. We'll leave it at that. Key number 3, having self-awareness. We all have heard a ton about self-awareness. I'm going to make this really simple in this section, just a couple slides. I think most people get this concept, but I want to hit a couple examples and give you a couple tools. So really, self-awareness is nothing more than being in tune with your body and being in tune with your mind at any particular moment. Just not having people have to point out to you, geez, Mike, you seem really frustrated. Well, I should have figured that out on my own first. I should have taken my own temperature. I should have realized I was running a little hot. So being in tune with your mind, with your body, the ability to understand where are we emotionally, physically at any particular moment. That's my definition of self-awareness. And that's what I work on with my clients in terms of helping them become a strong leader and having this type of self-awareness. At my last organization, I had 2 partners that came up with this model, wrote a book about it. The book's called Red Zone, Blue Zone. It's still in print if you wanted to go out and get it and read more about it. But I use this framework with folks all the time. I found it's straightforward, it's easy to understand. And that is that we as individuals, we find ourselves either operating in the red zone or the blue zone. The red zone really about, when we get triggered and we're focusing on ourselves and we're closed off and we feel threatened and we act prideful. And the blue zone is where we're, there's collective energy. I'm not thinking about just me. I'm thinking about the team. I'm thinking about the organization. I'm thinking about our priorities. I'm open-minded. I'm listening to other people. I trust other people. I'm a little more humble in that setting. So what I'm going to ask you to do is use that as your construct to understanding a little bit about your self-awareness. And the typical process I walk people through is, number 1, just pause. If you're sensing, hey, I don't feel the same. My heart's racing a little bit. I'm warm in the forehead. I got a little sweat thing, but whatever that is, if something got triggered, just take a time out. Could be a quick 20-second timeout. Just take a pause and just recognize my emotions, my body sending me a signal, telling me something's off. Just take a pause. And then number 2, locate yourself. By locate yourself, I mean, am I in the red zone right now or am I in the blue zone? Am I demonstrating these types of things or am I demonstrating blue zone attributes? Okay. Then once you get a sense of that, then you work on the shift. Okay. I know I'm red zone. First of all, just say it's okay. I realize I'm in the red zone. I went in the red zone again. Fine. Don't beat yourself up about that. The goal is recognize it and now shift. Work your way back to the blue zone. Okay. Reframe some things. Maybe you heard something and you told yourself a story that, man, somebody's really challenging me on my competency on what I just said. And, you get prideful and you get threatened. Well, reframe that. Maybe they didn't really threaten your competency. Maybe they just either didn't understand fully what you were saying, or maybe they want to, ask another question just to make sure they understand it. Or maybe they want to add an idea to yours because they're just as interested in this thing working out the best, just like you do. So shift by using maybe a reframe and what you're hearing and the stories you might be telling yourself in your own head. And the last thing is to learn your triggers. Something's going to put each of us in the red zone. We all have unique triggers. I list 4 here. Some of us have a trigger around control. So if I feel like I need to have control and something's happening and I feel like I'm losing control, that's going to put me in the red zone. I need to know that. For some people, it's competency. If you challenge my competency, I'm going to go red zone. Value just means, I worked really hard. I put a lot of this effort into this, and I just don't feel like you're appreciating that. And that'll put me in the red zone. Or survival. It might just be, man, I've done everything I could do. And I think my organization is telling me I don't fit here anymore. And that might make you go red zone, right? Know what your triggers are, not just so that you recognize them when you're in the red zone to move you back over to blue zone, but in the future, you can anticipate. If I'm going into a meeting and it's either with people or on a subject that might trigger my control or trigger my value, going in, I prepare for that. Okay, I know those people are going to be there. They tend to react that way. I'm managing myself. So now I've moved from self-awareness to self-management. So going into that meeting, I'm preparing for it. So my triggers are less likely to put me in the red zone. Use this construct, use this model as you think about gaining greater self-awareness. The only other concept I want to give you on self-awareness is the idea of a mirror window. I'm going to do this one briefly because I think people are familiar with it. And that is just from a self-awareness standpoint, when there's a situation that maybe has gone a little sideways, I tend to think of it this way, and probably because it's true most of the time, in that if something's gone sideways, there's a really good chance that I contributed to it. I've done something, or maybe I haven't done something, and that made it go sideways. But either way, take out a mirror first. Do yourself a favor, take out a mirror first and look at yourself first. Is there something I did? Is there something I didn't do? Ask people, did I do something? But I want you to own your own stuff, own your own contributions to something that's not going the way you want it before you start looking at other people. Because it's always easier for us to look through the window at others. They didn't do this. They said that. They were supposed to do this and they didn't. Okay. If you want to go there first, go to the mirror. Okay. Mirror's about responsibility. The window should be about giving credit to other people out there. Use the mirror first. Okay. Quick concept on that. Key 4, becoming trustworthy. I wrote about 5 traits of trusted leadership. They're right here. They're easy to remember. They all begin with the letter C: care, character, communication, capacity, consistency. And I show a little image here of a light switch. One's a dimmer, one's an on-off switch that goes up and down. And I always tell people, building trust is the dimmer switch. Slow turn, slow build. You have, again, through your words, through your actions, you're building trust, becoming a stronger leader. The switch off and on is how we lose it. We could spend a lot of time slowly building trust, but we could do one thing or say one thing to certain people a certain way, and that switch will come down and everything we built from a trust standpoint will disappear, and we'll have to spend a lot of time regaining that trust. So remember that little image when it comes to kind of being trustworthy. Long time to build it, can lose it in a heartbeat, so be careful. I'm going to go through each one of these a little quickly here in terms of the 5 C's. The first was around care. So there I'm just talking about, just think about it in terms of having selfless concern for other people and putting other people first. And if you want to be a leader, you're going to be managing other people. And you have to figure out, do I want to manage people? Because that means I'm going to have to interview and hire and onboard and develop and help manage their career development and have hard conversations with people and encourage people. Do you want to do all that? If you do, then you'll be a leader and a manager of people. And if not, that's okay. But just understand that from a care standpoint, if you're going to be a leader, you're going to have to think about other people as much, if not more, than yourself. The second thing is character. And that just says, folks, I'm going to operate from the standpoint of being honest, having integrity, being dependable, being vulnerable. There's just certain aspects of character that people around us are going to need to see for us to be trusted as their leaders. The third is communication. Fundamental thing. I coach somebody right now that they wanted to do nothing but spend 3 months to the CEO around their communication because it's that important. It's 2 ways of communicating. And I always tell people, don't just think about your outbound communication, think about inbound. It's 2-way. On the inbound, just be a good listener. Are you an active listener? Do you listen to learn from people, or are you listening just to respond as soon as they're done talking? So be an active listener. And then on the outbound side, just be really intentional. Be available to people, whether it's communication that happens, one-on-one because somebody walks by your office and wants to come in, or if it's a weekly team meeting you're having, be planful about what you want to communicate and how you want to communicate it there. If it's a monthly meeting, a quarterly meeting, an annual meeting, be planful about your communications. Each opportunity to communicate is an opportunity to build trust. If you're not building it, you're probably bringing it down. So communicate intentionally and planfully. The fourth C is capacity. And here again, we talk about vertical versus horizontal learning. Capacity has to do with the horizontal learning. And as a leader, just quickly, I would say that there's three things every leader has to be able to do. So if you're a learner and you want to grow, these are three areas I want you to think about growing in. Number one, be able to create, craft, communicate a clear vision. Your team, your organization, more than anything, needs to understand where are we going. So as a leader, you have to be able to put out a vision. Number two, learn how to build strong teams. Learn how to identify what makes each person unique. Help each person understand how their role connects to delivering the vision for the organization and the purpose for the organization. Listen to them, collaborate with them, build a strong team. That's number two for a leader. Number three, build a strong culture. Don't have time to get into culture today. It's a whole nother webinar. But think about making sure that everybody in your organization understands the purpose for our organization, is committed to that purpose, and you've got a climate in your organization that's beneficial to achieving your purpose. And by climate, I mean things like collaboration, creativity, connection to other people. You want all that to be part of your culture, okay? So that was very brief. We're almost at 50 minutes. Those were the four keys to stepping up your leadership today. I'm going to look now and see if we have any questions before I move on, because I know we're short on time. And right now, there isn't a question. If you have a question, feel free to type it in, please. I do want to leave you with one other closing thought and another quote. And this one is from an unnamed author, so old I don't even think they were able to attach the name to it. But this is what I work with folks all the time when I'm coaching them around their leadership. And that is, if you're looking around your team and your organization and you're seeing things you want to change and you're seeing people you wish would change or things in your organization would be better and improved, think of this quote: the desire of every leader should be that all that she or he wants done in their people should first be truly and fully done in themselves. So again, every leader should be that all that she or he wants done in their people and their organization should first be truly and fully done in themselves. So the concept here is, if you're waiting for your organization, your team to transform, we need, as the leaders, to transform first. We need to be our best first before our teams and our organizations can be their best. They need that from us. You need that to be a strong leader. So I'm going to look one more time to see if there's any last questions. No questions have come in. I hope that means that everything I've shared made perfect sense and there's no follow-up necessary, but I'm sure that's not the case. So if there is follow-up you'd like to, either discussions you'd like to have or questions you'd like to share, just have another conversation. You can reach me at mike@jasperconsulting.org. You can go to the website, jasperconsulting.org. My phone number is right here. Feel free to give me a call on my cell anytime. Please go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn. There's my LinkedIn URL. Would look forward to having you connect there. I share a lot of insights on a weekly basis through my LinkedIn posts. And I have just one comment, not a question, that they enjoyed the webinar today. I hope, again, for you who submitted the question, the comment, thank you. And I hope for everybody that there's 2, 3, 4 things that you were able to take out of this 50 minutes that's going to help you going forward to be a better leader. Remember, we all lead, so we might as well do it well. And I'll leave you with that thought. Thanks for joining me today. Have a great rest of the day.